someone that's been like an operations manager, business manager type person that knows how processes run and can understand the business structures. They might not know the technology, but they're interested in the technology and can learn how to see how the systems work and then apply it to businesses. You can go into the whole business analyst side, but for an average MSP, I don't think you need that type of level of university degrees and stuff. I think it's more around the like practical experience and identifying, do they have the people and process side but need to learn the technology, or do they have the technology stuff and are interested in learning the people and process side, and have the soft skills.
All right, welcome back to the Top Left podcast, where we're talking about leadership, the MSP space, agile, project management, a whole bunch of other things relevant to MSP. So today I have again with me James Davis from PAX 8 in Australia. Welcome back, James.
Thanks, Will. Great to see you again.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been so long. So looking forward to digging into this topic that we were emailing about. We were talking about projects, and I think we've done 6 or 7 episodes and getting good feedback on that. So today we want to talk about lift and shift versus transformation. So I guess what precipitates this topic?
Well, I'm starting to see, and as I'm talking to a lot more clients and talking to a lot more people out there in the industry about this, is a lot of MSPs, like we've been talking about, don't necessarily do projects that well, but they're putting in a lot more effort to do it because there's a lot more drive to do a lot more projects. But what I'm seeing is that difference between the lift and shift and the transformative projects is we're running into a lot of issues because, like we've discussed a lot, we don't really run our projects with any type of framework. So there's no point of reference of how we're typically managing a project. So we just dump them all in the same bucket. And to sort of start at the real basics is the lift and shift type project, waterfall type project, whatever you want to sort of call it, is that type of project where we can plan out the steps, we know what's going to happen, and then we just follow our process A to B to C to D. There might be some issues that come up in that, but it's usually that more linear path. And, so some examples of that might be we're upgrading a on-premise server from like 2012 to 2022, or it might be a network infrastructure upgrade that we're just putting more modern switches and wireless access points type of thing. We're not changing how the environment and the business functions. We're just upgrading and modernizing it. We might think we're changing things because we're looking at it in the perspective of behind the scenes of, we might be improving firewall rules, we might be turning on newer, more modern technology, but it's not actually affecting how the business operates. Whereas a transformation project, that's when we actually affect the business operations, the processes, and how the people operate. And what's really sparked me and what seems to resonate when I talk to people is SharePoint as an example. So we've been doing SharePoint as a lift and shift exercise of, we'll take your files, we'll dump it on SharePoint and it's done. But when I bring this up and go ask people, do you often find those projects stall out because the client that you're working with doesn't do what's expected of them? So they're not updating file paths, they're not removing the files and folders that they don't need, not creating a new structure, that kind of stuff. That's the transformative part at its simplicity, is they have to change what they do and they need to be bought in, where our lift and shift is purely they know they need to upgrade, they get us to do it, we drive the whole project and we get it done. Where when we start looking at the transformative projects, actually we're not the ones that need to own it and drive it. It needs to be a process where the client actually owns and drives it because it's impacting them. They're the ones that need to have a purpose for it. And knowing the difference between these types of projects, I think, is very important, because if we don't frame it up from the start in the sales process and we don't engage in the right way and we treat it like a waterfall, we're going to fail every time. It's always going to be a costly project. We're going to have to follow up all the time. we haven't scoped up the appropriate amount of like project management time and the consultation time, because we're not expecting that. Or we give that all away for free as part of pre-sales because we have to spend a lot longer trying to sell them a project instead of treating it as a different type of engagement from the start. Are you seeing the same sort of things from your worlds?
Oh, yeah. I see this need for that digital adoption transformation, but it's a very different mindset from an MSP, because historically our job has been to like stay out of the way, like let them work, like zero downtime. So we're not good at training and not good at consulting, not really good at understanding your needs. It's like keep the stuff running, don't let it break, prevent the reactive issues, be proactive. Yep, do the life cycle upgrades on hardware, and we would like P2V bare metal to a VM and then move it to the cloud, but keep it the same because clients don't want to change. There's a lot of these baked in mentalities that on our team, our culture, that's hard. So it's like a whole other skill set and mindset. I think even a team in the process to deliver those transformations. Just whether you do it as a waterfall or an agile, really understanding their needs and doing it bit by bit, deliver the value, show them the power of it, create that fear of missing out, make it addictive. It's like a whole new team we're going to build. It's almost like a new company. Like the lead gen is different, the value props are different. And we need both. It's not like a one or the other. You got to choose which one is best. And sometimes for where that company is at, they should just do a lift and shift. Like get off their old crap, get onto a cloud VM in Azure, and maybe it's like a next year or a 3-year thing, but at some point they got to bite it off and do the transformation. Otherwise, they're going to get left in the dust.
I think that's a very good perspective around like where the client's at. Like you just said, like where we've baked in that culture and that mindset of we just need to be in the background and just make sure things work and it's as least impact as possible. And we don't take into account the client's maturity. We don't understand a lot of the time their business strategy, what they're aiming for, what's the motivation. And that's a key part of that transformation project because it's consultative based. Like we need to, like you said, get them excited. That's how we get them bought in. And if we're not talking to the right people in the sales process as well, it's a different sales process as well. Because typically our lift and shift, we're often talking to the IT manager, the practice manager, like operations manager type people. And they do just want it to stay, have as least impact, just fix the problems that we've got. Yes, it's a necessary evil a lot of the time because we've got to spend some money to keep it upgraded type mentality, where these transformation projects, actually, they go across the business and they need to start from the top a lot of the time because it needs to have that organization-wide buy-in. But if we're still talking to that sort of management operations layer, that's not going to usually spread across the business, and there's not going to be any internal vision behind it and purpose behind it because it just gets treated as an operational process. And that lift and shift mentality comes in from their side as well. And this is why when we start these projects and like the SharePoint wiring gets stalled because the CFO is in charge of doing the file structure, like why would they choose that over their day-to-day work? Like what is it going to do for them to actually put in the effort to fix that sort of task that they need to do? Whereas if it's coming from the CEO of we're moving to M365 and we're utilizing this new technology to enable us to automate things and reduce our manual efforts and things like that, and have practical examples of what that's going to do for different departments, then people are motivated to actually get it done. But that starts at the whole sales process. And we all fail at that because, like you said, we haven't got that consultative mindset a lot of the time.
Yeah, so we've been going through that is because we had a client that large company had grown quickly and they wanted to get off the file server. They got remote sites everywhere, construction sites. They've gone from 10 employees to like 100 in like 5 years. And we recommend let's do the assessment to come up with a plan. They're like, no, let's just move the data. We have to get off the server, move it all. And it was a disaster. And even though we made the recommendation, which they turned down and they wanted to force it through, and now it still looks bad on us. So now they hired another company that's trying to do it the right way, but they're waiting on the client to make decisions around design and stuff. So it could have been done by now if they had listened to us like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It could have been long done. So they're learning, we're learning, but we also didn't have the skills to do it either. So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Which one was better?
What skills do you think you were missing?
One is just knowing if you're going to go all in on the 365 stack, you need to know your teams, your voice, the OneDrive, the deployment. You got to know Azure AD. If you want to go all in, you got to know all the bits and pieces. And there's things we've been doing as an industry for 20 years, like group policies, print management, login scripts, all that. Like, how does that apply? There's just a different way of doing it. It can't all be done in 365. So there's workarounds and hacks, but there's a learning process. We've been putting our people through all the 365 training for it to really understand that. But then there's still like the project management consultative training side. The good news is like Microsoft does have trainers they can bring in, like you can hire. I think they're like third-party contractors, but they'll deliver all the training. But there's still like workflows to build it. Like, how do you set up a new project? It used to be maybe on a file server, you'd have a bunch of empty folders with all your templates and you'd copy that to your new project. Well, what's the equivalent in SharePoint? Is that even the best way of doing it? How should your project managers kick off your new $10 million construction project? There's a lot of big questions that you need a business mindset. You need to know organizational structure, all of that technicians don't have.
Yeah, that's the real challenge, isn't it? For MSPs is we can learn those technical skills. If we invest in their M365 platform, I find the same is most MSPs don't really have that skill set and understand what that world looks like yet. And they haven't been investing enough in understanding it as a platform and how it all intertwines. It's more like we'll go look at Azure AD on its own. We'll go look at Intune as its own, and we look at it as a siloed approach rather than looking at the whole and creating a vision and purpose around what can we use this platform for our clients. And that's the transformative mindset that you need to have, is being able to create vision and purpose. And then it flows through to the whole consultative process. Like you said, you need to have that business mindset. And most techs aren't going to have that mindset. That's not their bread and butter. And most average MSPs, the person that has that sort of skill set is actually the owner. So if you're going to look at embracing this sort of project, because I see there's huge opportunity in this space. There's lots of money to be made if you do it right. But if the owner isn't wanting to do it, isn't going to be focused on that sort of just being a consultant and then putting a manager in place, there's no point really looking at it, in my opinion. And I think that's where you start looking at partnering up with like systems integrators and stuff, so that you can at least keep the client relationship. Because what will happen is if you can't maintain the relationship and can't bring in these partners so that you can maintain it once it's there, you're going to lose out, because there are becoming more and more mature technology solution providers, not just trying to change the language from just an MSP, that are focused on being able to be that sort of end-to-end deep relationship, provide our lift and shift and our management components, and be able to do these sort of transformation projects. And you open yourself up to losing your recurring revenue from not being able to deliver these projects, because you're not providing value to that particular client, because they're looking to transform their business. And that's the danger that I see. And from that, again, like, it keeps coming back to the sales process and mindset, that if you're not on the front foot and you're waiting to be told we're trying to change the business, you're already on the back foot, and that you're only going to get further and further behind the rest of the industry's more mature providers are running around. And this even extends, like you mentioned there earlier before, around like the assessment. So a lot of what I see that we get wrong, and I mentioned it before, is that in the sales process, we look at it as, we'll do some pre-sales, we'll just do a scope, we'll give you this big project amount. They don't actually know what they're getting. We don't really know what we're delivering. And then we follow our standard project processes when we have it. Where actually these sort of projects, we need to think completely different. So one of the things I talk about a lot is we need to start charging for the discovery process, because it's consulting. We have to go in and understand their businesses. So your example was perfect. We're like construction company doing massive projects. If we're going to change how we're working, like how do they currently start projects? How's it going to look how does it need to work? How can we make it more efficient? And then we recommend the technology. Maybe SharePoint, like you said, maybe SharePoint isn't suitable for managing that, but we need to charge for that. So instead of doing like what we spoke around, like with our traditional projects where we can just go scope it up properly, create our buckets, have a fixed price, we know what we're going to do, we can automate pieces, etc. We actually need to go back to more of a retainer model and billing in phases. So if we're doing a discovery, we should be able to estimate it's going to be 15 grand for discovery, and we're going to charge you, eat down that retainer by the hour as we do it. But the outcome from there is going to be we're going to have a go or no-go decision, because in this sort of consultative environment, as opposed to our lifecycle management type stuff, saying no can be a good thing. If at that point, like we're helping them make a decision of what they need to do. Maybe we do that discovery process and we go, maybe the cloud isn't right for you right now. Let's just do an infrastructure upgrade. Maybe the infrastructure is fine for where it is at the moment. And we go, well, it's not a decision now. We're going to revisit this in a year or two, but we've produced them a tangible value point where they've made a business decision and they know what they're doing next. And that's very different to our typical MSP engagements.
Very different. So it's they have a different sales process. So like we just got an RFP in our Windows MSP from a nonprofit, and it's very specific on what they want. I'm like, hey, that's actually a perfect fit. We do like 95% of this. We don't want to touch the WordPress, but we'll do everything else. And we got other clients like that. I wouldn't try to spin that into a digital transformation discovery. I don't think that makes sense. They're clear on what they want. Get them on the door on that, and then as part of the VCIO, we'll have conversations around how can you better leverage your 365. So it's but they could come in the other way as well, where it may not come in as management, but come in as a SharePoint review or something like that. So it's something we got to be adaptable to as to where they're at in their buying journey and what are their goals. And is it that they just need better help desk and a better, more reliable team, or is it are they ready for the transformation, or vice versa? Yeah, I don't want to go away from the MSP work, but it's a very defined box, the MSP box, and then there's the digital stuff is another thing, specific team, people on the team doing it. So there's overlap, I see. Like every technician should be able to know how to set up users and manage permissions, but that's different from the workflow and Power BI and Power Automate, and what about Microsoft Dynamics and taking your on-prem Access database or a big Excel file and doing it the native best practice 365 way. That's a whole other, you almost need a programming mindset for that, a database mindset. A lot of techs don't have that or want it. They don't want to be scripting. They don't want to think about tables and columns and data integrity.
You'll be excited about it too, don't you? That's a lot of MSPs, especially the owners, are so very tired that they're just wanting their business to run. A lot of them are looking towards exit in the next 3 to 5 years. They're not really opening their mind up to the opportunities and potential that's coming out of really COVID forcing a lot more people onto the cloud a lot faster. Like this was always going to happen, but we've had an external force that's driven this. And as the economy is going through some sluggishness, and it will for a few years, actually going to be more businesses that are going to be looking to be transformed for a lot of reasons. Recruitment's very hard and you can't find people, so you need to leverage technology more to be able to deliver services and generate money. Retention of staff is difficult. Like we're going through that in our industry space, but it's happening everywhere. So one of the components of that is good technology enabling people to actually do their job and not get frustrated. And then companies wanting to find more efficiencies and more profitability by getting an ROI out of technology. And this sort of digital transformation, business transformation stuff we've always seen that as, it's always big enterprise. But it's coming more and more into the mid-market and smaller businesses, especially as the demographics change of the leadership and ownership of businesses, like millennials becoming a lot more line managers, C-suite, owning businesses now, make a lot different buying decisions than what previous generations do. So not only is it in the cloud more, but we're looking at how do we enable ourselves and others. And that's not the mindset of MSPs. We're not about enablement in terms of training and stuff. We've always been focused on let's enable the company to have a stable environment, and then they deal with all the application layer and all the end user training and things like that. But we need to go more in depth, because we're probably the best suited, even though we might not have all the skill sets and capabilities right yet. But if you're focused on developing that, we're actually in the right spot to deliver that. And this is where I think the danger of just focusing on security is sort of the buzz thing, and the thing that as MSPs that we need to do right now. I think we're missing big client need that's not being addressed. It's the sort of stuff, if I was like a CEO of an organization, yes, security is really important. I need to have that governance. But if you're not helping me run my business, being able to enable my business more and my people, I'm going to probably be looking elsewhere. And not all businesses are going to be in that space. Like we said a few times, the maturity, the life cycle that they're at, they're going to be in one of those sort of two phases of either they need to transform and they're looking at that way and they're looking into the future, or they're looking at sort of, let's call it maintenance mode, where they need to just make sure things are stable and they're sort of ticking along. And they're not mutually exclusive. Like you said, there's still very much a place for us to deliver that maintenance mode. It's not, let's dump all of that and then rush to this exciting transformation stuff. It's actually, we need to be able to deal with both. And whether that's, like you said, build another team, partner with somebody else, we need to be managing that and it comes down to being able to see the opportunities for it.
Yeah, I see the opportunity. But it's a huge challenge to get there. But I know it's like, I go to my fitness trainer every Friday and I see the sign above his door. It's in his basement of his house. He's got a sign there that says, it doesn't get easier, you just get stronger. And if we think we're trying to build for an easy business, like, yeah, we should do that, build it to sell, make it fun to run. But if we don't figure out this transformation bit, we're going to get run over or just get acquired and bundled up by some commodity player like the big telcos and such that are rolling out the smaller MSPs or mid-sized MSPs. So it's something I know we've got to power through. I haven't figured it out by any means, but I also see like here in Canada, the government's all behind it. They put this whole CDAT program together. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's $4 billion, $4 billion into digital advisory, like into this transformation stuff. So they will pay for this discovery project. They'll pay $15,000. So the client's only paying like $1,000 or $1,500 of that, and then the rest is coming to us. So we're getting certified on that. There's a very stringent program on that. They've actually capped the number of people, and nobody else can apply anymore. So we're going through that, waiting to get approved, certified to deliver these projects. But we've got partners who can help us deliver it. So you start with the assessment, and then once that's approved as recommendations, it could be like 200 or 1,000 hours of consulting work to implement it, like a roadmap. You can get these Canadian businesses can get a 0% loan from the government to go and implement it. So I'm not a fan of governments handing out money because that's inflation, which is devaluing currency and stealing from me. But hey, if there's a gravy train, I'm going to put my hand out and dip into it.
Well, it just shows when governments are making those sort of decisions of, like, it's to spark the economy, isn't it? It's that whole, we're hitting that point with, especially in places like Canada and Australia and New Zealand, we've got such a small talent pool that we need businesses that can run smarter and do more with less. And that's where clients are on their life cycles, and you taking the time to actually understand your client base is really important, because there's probably clients that you've got that are themselves are looking towards retirement, and they probably don't want to spend, they probably don't want to change the business, they're just looking to sell and get bought up. Got probably those middle ones that are sitting there at this point, they're a bit in maintenance mode, they might be a little bit lost. And then you've probably got a good portion there that are looking at doing things differently, but you're not involved in the conversations. And this is the same for me in MSPs. Like, a lot, if you're not looking at a 10-year future and you're looking at a short term, like sell in the next 3 to 5 years, that's fine. And you probably don't need to get on this transformation journey if you are legitimately going to sell soon. But if you're looking at a longer term business, there's no real middle ground at this point with all the disruption. So you need to be thinking about over this time, and especially with the disruption that's happening with security and stuff, what am I building, and being more deliberate about that so you can see out the next couple of years while it's disruptive, but you'll have a really valuable business with a good client base. Because like you said, there's a lot of bigger businesses that are just driving the whole commodity game. And if you're not providing any value in terms of transformation and other more boutique offerings that's more specialized, there's no value. You're providing less value. There's going to be that tipping point in our industry. It's been very relationship driven. There's going to be that tipping point where it is a commodity and price is far more important for the help desk stuff. And as there's more and better technology, the bigger guys are going to get better at actually doing this and providing the enough value to do it well enough. They're not going to be great and excellent service like we might think we do with our smaller relationships, but the cost difference is going to be huge. And it's too compelling for a lot of businesses that are in that maintenance mode that only need a help desk that functions well enough that keeps them running. They're going to go towards more of that cost-effective option. So we've got to be thinking about our business and what our longer-term strategies are.
Okay, well, maybe wrap this up with this question is, what would be an ideal first hire? Somebody's starting this out, building it out as a team or division. What would be the first hire who would be a natural fit for navigating? There's just hundreds of SaaS tools. Obviously, there's Microsoft stuff. You got Salesforce. There's a ton of CRMs, ton of integration, a lot of add-ons, as we were chatting before. So what personality, role, experience, degree, education would be a good fit to do it hands-on with a client and build out a team? I think it's a who, not what question.
That's a great question, Wim.
Have you seen that person yet in any of your clients that you work with, James?
I have. So the two sort of people that I see do this well are either that older, experienced MSP owner that has the energy, that's already been, they know the technology, they know business, they're good at, but they've got the experience of soft skills, they can talk to people, they can manage projects and get it and lead it from there. And if you, like we sort of spoke about before, if you as an MSP owner who's excited about this transformation stuff, to make that work, you need to make sure there's management for the rest of the business. You have to sort of look inwards and go, is there the right service management? Is the right projects? Is someone else managing the day-to-day business? If that's not in place, you build that out first and then you start focusing on the transformation. Don't just get excited and run off. The other people that I see that are succeeding in this there's probably two sort of personalities. There's the experienced tech that actually enjoys more of the people facet of it, and they are learning more about the business and they can talk. So there's either the more older experienced ones that have worked in different industries, worked in enterprise, worked in small business, and they've just got that experience where they can do it and probably need some support and focus. Or that sort of person that's hitting like 35 to 40 that's got enough experience as a tech but it hasn't worked enough, that just needs support and development to take on this role. And for a lot of smaller MSPs, that's probably good enough because you're not working with big clients, you're not working with really complex and challenging things, and they can sort of piece together the smaller SaaS stuff quite easy. Or someone that's been like an operations manager, business manager type person that knows how processes run and can understand the business structures. They might not know the technology, but they're interested in the technology and can learn how to see how the systems work and then apply it to businesses. You can go into the whole business analyst side, but for an average MSP, I don't think you need that type of level of university degrees and stuff. I think it's more around the practical experience and identifying, do they have the people and process side but need to learn the technology, or do they have the technology stuff and are interested in learning the people and process side, and have the soft skills? So it's probably where I'm seeing businesses that are starting to get into the more transformation stuff that are getting traction with it because of those kinds of people.
Yeah, I agree with that. I haven't found that perfect person, or they're busy doing tech work right now for our clients. So we're kind of juggling around pieces. It's kind of repositioning the army, but you got to like train their replacement and get up to speed and build the process into it before we can free them up to do the work for the clients. So we're kind of, I got some of the strengths, but it can take a bit to reconfigure the team to do that.
Got to be deliberate, and it's going to take time. But it's very unlikely you can hire someone off the street that's going to just do this magically. Because if they can, they're probably running their own businesses already, or they're already a high paid consultant. So this is one of those things that we're going to have to spend time over the next few years actually developing out the capabilities and supporting the people.
Like I know some people in my network, and I've talked with them about doing it, but it's like we don't have the client base to have them full time on it either, and they're working, let's say, as an IT manager or CIO somewhere. So it's like, okay, can they dial their work week back from 40 hours to 35 or 30, and start building up a client base with us? But that's it's just a long term thing, because that skill set could cost 150, 200K, which you can't do if the business is not there. So it's like, how do you build a book of business? And that's entrepreneurism.
It is, and this is where potentially if you don't have like a big client pool and there is that limited work, this is where you partner up. Like partner up with a SI that already does this stuff. This is their world, and they're not interested about the ongoing relationship and management and maintenance. They do the professional services, and then they move on to the next professional service. And so there's that good synergy there that our worlds don't cross over, and we haven't been working together a lot of the time because we've been seeing those SIs as competition, and it's bad when businesses bring them in and we're threatened by it. But actually, there's fantastic synergy that helps both sides that we should be leveraging.
It actually kind of reminds me of the early ERP days where people would spend, let's say, $1 million on an ERP, and then there was this ratio they had. I don't know if it's still true, but for every dollar you spend on software, you spend $2 on implementation between consultants and internal resources and stuff. And I don't know if that rule still applies here, that 2 for 1, but it's still adapting, understanding your current process, where you want to get to, building that out over a year or 2 years. Of course, that's how those big ERPs were sold. Like, yeah, you can have these, here's an amazing, do the whole pitch and everything, and you can have this in 6 months, and then 5 years later, they still didn't have a quarter of it, right? I'm sure we've all heard the stories, but it's kind of maybe a repeat of what happened 20, 30 years ago with the first ERPs. Today, it never hit the communication side of it. And a lot of what we're talking about digital transformation is the collaboration, communication, voice, email, calendaring, data flow stuff. So, well, that's good. Love that. Love that last bit there on the who, not just the what. So there's great people there of maybe they're at the latter half of their career that would be a great fit for this. The people skills, the business experience, they've seen enough, what's gone around, to evaluate solutions, assess them, guide the conversations with the vendor, the consultants to make a successful transformation.
And my final thought about this, because we could talk about this all day, is if you are that sort of business that's looking for like that 10-year type of plan, there are going to be a lot of MSPs that are on the market to be purchased over the next 3 to 5 years, and the owners aren't actually ready to retire. They don't want to run a business anymore. They don't want to run an MSP anymore. But they're still interested in working with people, working with businesses, working with technology. That you could probably find win-win situations of acquiring to grow your business and then getting this talent that might only want to work part-time at that point. They might only want to do 20 hours a week, and that's maybe all you need for that business that you've got at that. So I reckon there's going to be a lot more of this sort of older talent from the MSP owner space that's going to be looking for these roles. And that's sort of that perfect win-win situation, I think.
Yeah, you got my wheels turning with that one. So, because I don't want to do it myself. Like I could, but I'm too much visionary to do that. I'm more like, hey, how do I find the right people? Which is why I asked that. It's totally self-serving. But hopefully that's useful to everyone. But there is we talked about it in the previous videos. Who should be your PM? Do you actually need a PM or is it a coordinator? All those things. So, well, that's been great. Thank you. And
Thanks, Wim.
until next time, thank you, James.
Thank you. Have a good one.